Good evening, you're watching Estuary TV News. Coming up, we'll be taking a look back at some of the stories we've covered this week, including redevelopment in Immingham and encouragement for market stall holders in Scunthorpe. And I'll be talking to Dr. Brian Lavery about his new book, The Headscarf Revolutionaries, and he'll be taking a look at the week's local papers. Welcome to Estuary TV News. I'm Hugh Richards. First of all, it's over to Erica Barker for the news headlines.
Industrial training facility Catch in Stallingborough is hoping to provide the next generation of stars when it comes to the engineering sector. Last year, the number of apprentices offered within Yorkshire and the Humber was the second highest in the country, even though over the past 2 years there has been a fall of 10,000. Catch say hands-on experience is invaluable, and David Edwards, Chief Executive of the Engineering Construction Industry Training Board, explained why it's such a great opportunity for youngsters.
The benefit of all of this is that the apprentices get a solid grounding in the engineering skills that are needed in the engineering construction industry. And they're all going to end up working, and I would say that our completion rates across the industry are very, very high. So a good apprentice, like these folks are virtually guaranteed a job in the engineering construction industry.
Hull's Freedom Festival has teamed up with City of Culture 2017. The partnership is enabling them to offer accredited training to volunteers for the first time and has helped them secure the internationally renowned Tangle as part of Freedom Festival's family-friendly programme. The festival runs from Friday the 4th to Sunday the 6th of September. New technology has been donated to the Oncology and Haematology ward at Scunthorpe Hospital, aiming to help those who are undergoing treatment. Four Lions charity in North East Lincolnshire, which aims to make a difference in the community, donated £3,000 with the cash being spent on an AccuVein machine. Ward manager Julian Willis explains how the machine works and its benefits.
It's a handheld device that can be used to locate veins on patients' arms, and it uses a laser light in order to do that. Patients that have had chemotherapy, their veins can become increasingly difficult to find, so it just makes the cannulation technique easier for both patients and the nursing staff that are cannulating.
And closing Humberston Library would have had a detrimental impact on the community. That's according to Melissa Taylor, the owner of the tea room based within the multi-use facility. The venue had been at risk of closure, but now Associated British Ports have stepped in with a grant of £5,000 to secure it long term.
It gives these guys a good start so that they can start without being in debt, and they can start to help fund this, the use of the library. And from what I understand, they've got over 500 registered users already.
There's a lot of elderly people here as well as young children with nowhere to go. Books is very important to our family and lots around here, and we just wanted to bring all the community together, something that appealed to every age.
Until next time, goodbye.
As we reported this week, Immingham has been thriving in recent years, with lots of investment bringing regeneration and major new shops to the town. The people of Immingham may have been disappointed by Tesco's failure to open, but with a new Aldi opening soon, optimism is high, as Dave Nunn discovered.
Exciting times are ahead for Immingham, which is receiving its new Aldi store as part of its wider regeneration, something which the Mayor of Immingham is excited to see come to fruition.
Oh, it's enormously exciting. We've waited so long, and since the talk of a supermarket, a big supermarket, is now 10-15 years. And obviously, with the start of the precinct and the redevelopment, and then because we've been messed about with Tesco, to have this new store behind us is fantastic.
In the past few months, many new shops have come to Immingham, something that business owners fear could affect their established local businesses.
What I could say is that the quality could be slightly better than the service.
Okay, do you think it'll affect? So you think it will affect?
It will affect us initially, because everybody just goes and buys everything in one go, don't they?
But enthusiasm among the residents of Immingham for the new shops and wider regeneration is unwavering.
It definitely does, yeah. Definitely needs new stores. New investment in the town, because it is a good town really, it's just the bad ones that make it bad.
Well, it's good that we've got Aldi's coming. It's good that we've got subways coming. I just hope that they're going to do something with that building there.
Right.
Because to be quite honest, Immingham has been promised such a lot of things for such a long time that I really hope that the regeneration will come into Immingham. It's long awaited.
Well, it's nice that we've got, it's nice that everything's getting back to normal, but it's still a big miss not getting a store where we were expecting one.
You know, it's good. Yeah, it's good. I mean, Aldi's opening Thursday. Yeah.
Okay, what kind of... Sorry, Karen.
No, so we're happy. We've been here 40 odd years, seen the changes. Brilliant, yeah.
The regeneration is making Immingham a town on the rise, and once the empty store is filled, another step in the wider regeneration plan will be filled.
You're watching Estuary TV News. A little later, we'll have news of North Lincolnshire Council and Scunthorpe Market, and Dan Kemp will bring you all the sports news. Dr. Brian Avery from Hull has written the Headscarf Revolutionaries, a book about, well, revolutionaries and headscarves in Hull in the late 1960s. Brian, tell us more.
Well, it tells the story, as it says on the front there, of Lillian Ballocha and the Hull triple trawler disaster in 1968. Basically what happened was it was the biggest peacetime fishing disaster of the 20th century. But the story behind it was the uprising of the fishwives very suddenly. And they managed to change the shipping laws for the better, saving countless of thousands of lives to come.
Well, what was that disaster there in 68? Three trawlers went down.
Yeah, in 1968, it's now known as the Dark Winter of 1968. And what happened was that three ships, the Ross Cleveland, the Kingston Peridot, and the St. Romanus, sank in rapid succession, within 3 weeks, in fact. And 58 men died. One man survived, and his remarkable survival story is told separately in the book also. But the fact was that Lillian Ballocha was a fishwife. She worked in a fish skinning plant, and she simply one day just put down her skinning knife, picked up a petition, and with great rapidity they found themselves at the heart of power. They found themselves in Westminster. The Prime Minister, Harold Wilson, had instructed the parliamentarians to assist them because it was putting Hull on the world stage, it was putting Britain on the world stage. This is a story that took Vietnam off the front page. And Mrs. Ballocha, who led what later became known as the Headscarf Army, she suffered personally from poison pen letters and
so this was a massive political campaign in the late 1960s, sparked by the disaster, and the objectives of the campaign were?
Well, there were four quite disparate people. There was Lillian Ballocha, who was, as I say, a fishwife. There was Mrs. Mary Deness, who was a skipper's wife. There was Yvonne Blenkinsop, who was a cabaret singer in Hull. And there was a lady called Christine Smallbone, who was another trawlerman's wife. And the four of them...
A fantastic selection of characters, really, isn't it?
And they'd never met before either. But what had happened is that the local union had arranged a meeting in the Victoria Hall in Hull, to which hundreds of fishwives attended. All of the Hessel Road community were packed into this hall. As a result, these four women were chosen to go to London. At the time, the Prime Minister, of course, and the President of the Board of Trade, who was the Grimsby MP, Anthony Crossland, both of them were out of the country at the time. Crossland was in New Delhi, and I think Wilson was in the United States in a presidential meeting. So it really was worldwide news. And of course, with the survival of the lone survivor, Harry Edam from the Ross Cleveland, it became, if it's possible, an even bigger story.
And it is a great story. On the back, I hear John Prescott, no less, has said, "Mark my words, this could become the next Maiden Dagenham." Lily Ballocha was remarkable. She and her three colleagues were absolute heroes. This was great popular policy making rising against the powers that be, as it were.
Oh yeah, these were, you have this phrase, ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah.
These were extraordinary people in extraordinary circumstances, thrown together entirely by fate. But this was I've used the phrase revolution because it was in 1968, which of course there was the Parisian uprisings, there was the civil rights movement
all that sort of thing
in the United States, and there was riots
Brian,
in the streets of Britain.
How can people get hold of this remarkable book?
It's available through Barbican Press. It's on pre-order from Amazon, and we launch it on May the 26th at the Hull Maritime Museum, which is in Hull, of course, and it's on general release from June the 11th.
Brilliant. Brian, thank you very much. Don't go away, because we'll have a look at the newspapers in a moment, but this is congratulations. It's an absolutely fascinating and inspiring story.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
We won't go on about it much longer, but the general election was big news, especially in Grimsby, so we asked some Grimbarians what they thought of the result.
Yeah, actually, fingers crossed. I think the others are all good. I'm not against any of them, so I like our political system. I think we're very lucky here in this country with our democracy, so there you go, that's my take on it.
The best thing that could have happened to us, the Tories getting in.
My vote was wasted. Who I voted for didn't get in either locally or generally, so.
So you're not happy?
No, well,
he's
not that he's not going to do much, is he? So, in my opinion. Look what he's thinking of doing with the NHS and stuff.
I'm glad that Farage didn't get him. I think he's an absolute pillock. As far as Grimsby goes, well, I don't know. She's an unknown quantity. But I've always voted Labour, but I wouldn't vote Labour in the local elections here because of the cock-up they've done with all the various things.
Do you think Melanie, on who is the new MP, has hard shoes to fill after Austin Mitchell's departure?
Yeah, she's got a lot to fill. I mean, he was a character, but he did put a lot of things forward for Grimsby.
I just hope that they're going to do something different to what they've already done, because at the moment it isn't very good at all. There's people that, obviously, there's too many people relying on food banks and things, and they need to do something more about that and help the people lower down than the ones that are higher up.
In Grimsby, it's Labour through and through, isn't it? But I mean, Tories have another chance to get, they've made good progress, and it seems silly not to let them have another go, really, don't it?
Markets used to be at the centres of our communities, but now they've often been replaced by supermarkets, anonymous monsters, parts of international chains. North Lincolnshire Council is fighting back, offering money off to new stall holders at Scunthorpe Local Market, and one stall holder is determined to involve his customers. Richard Morris has more.
Love Your Local Market fortnight starts tomorrow, and in Scunthorpe it's already receiving good praise from stall holders. Paul Potter, who owns a card stall and Potter's auction house, is very supportive of the new investment to encourage new stall holders.
We started on here 32 years ago with our card stall, and it was just a hobby at the time because we was working at the steelworks and was always under threat of redundancy and one thing or another. So we took it on as a hobby, and we really loved it, and we still do. We've been doing it all this time. We've got great customers. We know them all by name. We watch the children grow up, and yeah, it's great. It's a good thing. We still get loyal customers come to the market. They know the value when they see it, they know a bargain. It's mostly the older generation, because the younger generation haven't really twigged onto the market yet, but I think when they do, they'll realise what a good place it can be.
While Paul is keen on the new venture, he thinks it has been a long time coming.
Well, for a long time, I think it's fair to say the council have maybe neglected the market. It's not just here, but in all towns, because they're old fixtures and fittings. But I think at Scunthorpe now, they've twigged on to what they've got here, and they're really trying to help and make a difference. So yeah, we've got a good team here, and they're really trying hard.
And moving from selling cards to an auction house are two quite different businesses.
They are. Well, I've always been interested in collectibles and vintage things from an early age. I used to go to local auctions, and they've dwindled one by one because of eBay and online auctions and one thing and another. And the last one closed in Scunthorpe last August, unfortunately. So I thought there's a gap in the market, we'll give it a try.
Dr. Brian Avery is still with me, and he's going to help me go through the newspapers from this week. Brian, what did you find first? Something rather appropriate to your interest in trawlers.
Well, and my interest in newspapers, because as you know, I was a journalist before I went into academia.
Yeah.
I'm a hackademic.
You're a hackademic.
And this story
strange
here,
hybrid.
Indeed. This story here is from the Hull Daily Mail, which was my old paper in the 1980s, a news editor back in the day. And it's a story about a friend of mine from Hull University, Dr. Rob Robinson, who's written a book about the Viola, which is the last surviving steam trawler, and surviving just very loosely there. It's laying in South Georgia in the South Atlantic for 50 years. It's basically
Yeah, show the pictures. Well, here we are. Yeah,
but we're hoping to get it back home, and if anybody can do that, Dr. Rob Robinson's a very fellow. He's a very enthusiastic teacher of history and a very enthusiastic writer of same. And his interest.
And she's appearing on stamps?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, it'd be commemorated. That's it. The story is the commemoration of it in stamps as as the last surviving steam trawler. But the story behind it, of course, is that they want to try and get it back home, back to Hull, and of course, steam trawlers. It sounds like something Dickens, but the steam trawler was still in operation in as late as the 1950s.
Yeah,
and 60s.
sure. And the fact that she's lying in South Georgia, down further away than the Falklands Islands, down in the Southern Ocean, just shows how far the range of those Humber trawlers were.
Yeah, I mean, well, indeed. I mean, in the book I've written as well, the trawlers, of course, were in Iceland, and one of the trawlers from Grimsby, the Notts County, which perished on the same night, run aground the same night as the Ross Cleveland perished, was bought for scrap, and it was bought for scrap by a local Icelandic entrepreneur who's now the biggest trawler owner in that area.
Yep.
And it all started with a piece of.
It would be wonderful to get her
trawler.
back, because there's museum ships. We're losing them too fast. We've got the Ross Tiger, of course, not a steam trawler in Grimsby, but to be able to just imagine being on those rough old, tough old vessels again.
And I hope as well that Hull gets the Viola back. I mean, it's a bit of a pipe dream, really, in time for 2017, because this is, the city of culture. It's not all about plays and poetry and. That is
the trawlers are part of Hull's culture.
Part of Hull's culture, indeed.
What's next? What have you got now? A story about a bank?
Yeah, I mean, bankers get a bad rap, deservedly so, and they're going to get even more from the people of Driffield. This is in the Driffield Times and Post. The Yorkshire Bank's announced. I mean, normally when you hear a banking story, you think crashes of money, millions of pounds. This is a sort of story that local papers exist to tell you. The Yorkshire Bank's announced that its branch in Driffield Marketplace is to close. And that's just a stroke of a pen somewhere in London, and the poor people of Marketplace in Driffield are left high and dry, a bit like the trawler in the South Atlantic.
Is the Yorkshire Bank based in London? It sounds a little bit more local than that.
Well, yeah, they may well be based in Leeds. Stroke of a pen in Leeds. A Leeds pen as opposed to, maybe it should be a pencil lead instead of a pen.
You are once a sub-editor, you never stop, do you?
Sadly, that's the case. I nearly split an infinitive there.
Go on. Anyway, so the problem is that Driffield Bank's closing.
And of course,
they
do this so casually and think that they can just replace it with a cash point machine. There's no people there. It's the fact that people seem to have just disappeared out of service now.
Well, it's the fact that banking especially is all done either by automated telephone lines or through the computer, through the internet. And there's no such thing as a proper bank manager anymore.
Well, that's it. I mean, it's like the Little Britain sketch, isn't it? Computer says no.
Yeah.
Many people, do you know, have torn their hair out trying to get through to a bank.
There are one or two very small banks that still do it, but to give them credit.
Like the ill-fated one in Driffield.
What's next? What have you got now?
I picked this one up from the Grimsby Telegraph, and basically politicians, a bit like bankers, take a lot of grief.
They do.
And there's a gentleman called Steve Besant.
Yes.
I believe a Liberal Democrat candidate for Grimsby.
He's an old friend of Estuary TV. He's appeared here before.
And I can see why. He comes across as a thoroughly nice chap. And there's thousands of people on Twitter agree. I'm reasonably new to the world of Twitter. I'm a late addition to the Twitterati, and on the insistence of my publisher and the BBC. Am I allowed to mention BBC here?
Yeah, you are.
They made me go on Twitter because
a bigger organisation than us. They're not necessarily better.
I'd done some writing for them, and they made me go on Twitter to plug it, basically. Now this is a great use of social media by this man, Mr. Besant.
Well, Steve Besant, I've interviewed him several times, and he is the nicest fellow you can possibly imagine. He's not at all like the horrible, cynical politician. But then on the other hand, when you interview all these politicians, none of them are horrible, cynical politicians. All through this general election, they've all turned out to be rather admirable and sincere and benevolent and intelligent people.
You see, I heavily suspect that Mr. Besant's probably not just pleasant in the 7 days running up to the vote. I suspect the other 349 days, or 59 days of the year, he's a gentleman as well.
Wonderful man, yes.
But whereas the politicians that you come across probably
No, they're not. Let's not be cynical about it. One
I
more
can't help it.
One more story.
Cynical sub-editor.
One more story, very quickly.
This is again from the Grimsby Telegraph, and they have a thing called Younger Reporter. And
yes.
of course, again, it breaches news and education.
Quickly in 10 seconds.
Rihanna Hewitt, aged 10, if you're the young should have a political voice, she says. In 2010, only 60% of the UK voted in the general election, and she goes on to tell us why the voice of youth should be heard. And with an eloquent voice like Rihanna Hewitt's, I think it's got a future.
Hope for the future.
I think that story's got legs, as they used to say in the Yankee film.
Brian, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Indeed. Here's the sport with Dan Kemp.
It's a massive weekend for two of our local football sides. Hull City head to White Hart Lane tomorrow to take on Tottenham Hotspur. The Tigers will be looking to pick up maximum points on the road in order to take their fight for survival to the final day. The side are 2 points adrift of safety with 2 games to go, and manager Steve Bruce is under no illusions what is needed from the final away trip of the season.
We need to go and get a result at Tottenham and keep it alive. And if we can do that, then we give ourselves a chance. And let's hope, as I said, there's another twist. Usually there is. I think in the club's history we never do things easy. So to get here in the Premier League we had to go through an unbelievable day. And let's hope next weekend we can do exactly the same. That we can keep it alive, all to play for, produce a performance, get a result, and see where it takes us.
Across the river, and the Grimsby Town players have now set off for Wembley. The conference playoff final awaits the Mariners, who with a win will return to the Football League. They've undergone steady progression since relegation in 2010, losing in playoff semis over the past 2 seasons. The big game kicks off at 2 p.m. on Sunday afternoon. And of course, we'll bring you up to date with the results on Monday evening's show. In Rugby League, both Hull FC and KR face tough Challenge Cup opposition. The Black and Whites host the Castleford Tigers on Saturday afternoon with Mickey Payet and Curtis Norton, both looking set for a return. Elsewhere, the Robins play Wigan tonight. The game is being held at a neutral venue of the Lee Sports Village due to the DW Stadium undergoing pitch repairs. Get in touch if you've got any sports stories you want to share with us. You can call 01472 31 553, and that's all for the sport.
Thanks very much, Dan. That's all we have time for. Just time, though, to remind you the Headscarf Revolutionaries by Brian Lavery. It is available on Amazon, and it's published by Bearcan?
Barbican Press.
Written too small for me.
Barbican Press.
If you have a story for us, please go to Facebook or Twitter pages. Details on the screen. Email news@estuary.tv or phone Grimsby 3155553. Emma's back next week. From me for now, goodbye.
Estuary TV's weather, sponsored by Hornsby's, celebrating 100 years in buses.
Hello and welcome to Estuary TV's weather. A generally fine Saturday to come with bright or sunny spells and just isolated showers, mainly towards the north and west, staying breezy with maximum temperatures of 16 degrees Celsius. After a dry morning, rain spreading southeastwards later on Sunday and clearing later.
Estuary TV's weather, sponsored by Hornsby's, celebrating 100 years in buses.